Welcome to our Sisters of Promise Live. Um, we are so grateful to be here. We have been, Sisters of Promise is for the missionaries currently serving, missionaries preparing, or return missionaries. As a return missionary myself, I know the struggles that we can have, and sorry, my brain was.
I can't hear you. I'm going to have to come back in, okay?
Okay. All right. So she'll be right back. But Sisters of Promise is a group for like I mentioned before, for sister missionaries who are preparing to serve a mission, who are currently serving a mission, whether you're out in the field or whether you are a service missionary serving from home, or also return missionaries. As Sisters of Promise, we hope to support you where you are in your journey as being a missionary. And missionaries aren't only called just as the ones that wear the name badge, whether you're a full-time missionary or service missionary or return missionary. For each of us members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I grew up hearing the motto constantly, every member a missionary. That was something that was always said, and that is so true. And President Nelson has asked us to, to join the youth battalion and to help to gather scattered Israel on both sides of the veil. And that's missionary work. And that's anything that we can do to help bring another person to face Jesus Christ and to be with him. Um, I'm joined here with Aneladee Milne, and she is the director of Warrior Women of Light and Daughter of Light. I am. I work with the young adult Warrior Women of Light and the Sisters of Promise group as a coach. And missions are something that's very near and dear to my heart, having served a mission myself, and my family, my mother's family, sister missionaries tracked them out. And that has always been something I wanted to do. Today I want to talk about identity theft. And the last time that we were live, we talked about the war between remembering and forgetting, and how real that war is to forget who we are and whose we are, and the effects that it has on us in our lives when we don't remember that we are daughters of God, children of God. President Nelson says that we are children of God, children of the covenant, and disciples of Jesus Christ. This is our very core identity of who we are. Satan wants to, the title of this, identity theft, he wants to steal that identity. He doesn't want you to remember who you are and that you belong to God and that you were created by him and he loves you. And if he can cause you to forget that, then you don't make choices based on your identity and who you are.
So, can I add to this? Who you are and whose you are is very important combination, because who you are is a very distinct individual. Whose you are is a collective experience. We in the gospel today, in the church today, we understand this almost better than any other organization, that these two very strong, distinct things are important, that we are children of Israel, we are a collective, we are his children, We are being gathered under his wings, and we are individual people with our own heart, our own mind, our own strengths, our own weaknesses, our own interests, our own contributions, our own our own loves, all of those things, and that makes us very, very uniquely us. And it's very important for us to know both of those things. Who am I uniquely? Because when I know who I am uniquely, I can stand strong in that. I can feel strong in that. And who I am collectively, I don't feel like I have to be alone. I don't have to be alone. I'm part of the vast network of trees in the forest holding each other up.
Hmm. That's really important. I, it's really important to remember both of those things. To remember that, and you might say, "How
Those
do?"
are the two things that are literally under attack
Yes,
by the adversary.
they're under attack, and when you're called to be a missionary, you're stepping out of. You're called to step out of the world, and you're set apart, and you. 'Cause in DNC section 4 talks about how I when you are called to, let's see, I'm going to turn there real quick. Did memorize it because that's one thing that we had to memorize. DNC section 4. It's very
And when you're called and set apart as a missionary, it does feel like that identity could go under attack, right?
it very well can, because then you're taking upon yourself the name of Jesus Christ in a very real frontline battle part. You are putting that name badge on where people know and recognize you're a missionary. You have answers for me. I have questions. And that in itself can become an attack on us. Like, I have questions for you. We can feel inadequate and say, I have answers for you. But those answers come through the Holy Ghost, and we're reminded of those things. But in section 4, it says, now behold, the marvelous work is about to come forth among the children of men. Therefore, O ye that embark in the service of God, see that you serve him with all your heart, might, mind, and strength, that ye may stand blameless before God in the last day. Therefore, if ye have desires to serve God, ye are called to the work. As missionaries, you had a desire that was planted in your heart to put in mission papers. Sometimes it's because your friends are going on missions, or as in my family, it was always when you go on your mission, not if you go on your mission. I'm the oldest of 4. There's 4 of us, and I have 2 brothers and a sister, and we all served missions because my parents were like, "That's what we do. We go and we serve. We serve God." We weren't we weren't forced to go on missions, but my parents grew that desire in us to serve a mission, and each of us served missions for very different reasons. Um, and then to continue on, he says, "For the field is white already to harvest, and he that thrusteth in his sickle with all his might, the same layeth up in store that he perisheth not, but bringeth salvation to his soul. And faith, hope, charity, and love, with an eye single to the glory of God, qualify him for the work." These are Christ-like attributes. These are godly attributes that we work on as missionaries, disciples of Jesus Christ, to carry with us. And it continues on with a few more. Remember faith, virtue, knowledge, temperance, patience, brotherly kindness, godliness, charity, humility, diligence. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. So once we're called as missionaries, we engage in a different kind of war between remembering and forgetting. We're having to, like in your missionary Preach My Gospels, chapter 6 is all about Christ-like attributes, and you study them on your mission as you learn to be that disciple on that mission, that missionary carrying the Lord's name. You're daily striving to become like Him, to serve like Him, teach like Him, um, bless others like He did. And sometimes it can be really hard when we believe something about ourselves that aren't true, because the adversary likes to say, "You're too shy. You shouldn't open your mouth or say anything." um, One thing that was hard for me on my mission, I was shy. I'm an introvert, and people would on my mission they would say, "Sister Jarvis, you need to speak up." We can't hear you. And then I would be mortified because I would be like, I'm too shy. I speak too quietly. And all these criticisms were in my head. But in knowing that I am a daughter of God and that's who my identity is, I can know also that I can do all things through Jesus Christ who strengthens me. So through the atonement of Jesus Christ, He, walking with Him, helps me understand that as a daughter of God, being called to be a missionary, I may be shy, but I can have what I call 20 seconds of insane courage and speak, open my mouth, and then an amazing miracle happens. Your mouth is filled with the Holy Ghost and what to say in that moment. And some other things that you might hear is, "You're too emotional, you're not spiritual enough, you're too sensitive, you're a failure, you're not good enough." And these are just words. They're just words, but over time when we hear those kind of things, whether they're coming from other people or from the adversary in our minds, those eventually become beliefs of how you see yourself. And it can be a real struggle. So if you could think about I want to tell a story. There was a family of ducks living in a pond, and well, ducklings. Let's see. Okay, let's tell a swan story. Once there was a swan baby who had a prickly brown feathers. He didn't look like the other baby birds around the lake. One day, large, colorful ducks saw him and said, "Why, that's the ugliest duckling I have ever seen. All the other ducklings are soft and yellow. You're brown and scruffy." The other ducklings began to laugh and point. "Look at the duck," they shouted. "You're the ugliest duckling ever." He thought, "I must be ugly. I must not belong." When the lake was calm and smooth like a mirror, he avoided looking at his reflection. He was afraid of what he might see. The mean duck told him he came from a bad egg and that he would never be like the others because he was different and he didn't fit in. Feeling ashamed and unwanted, the swan baby kept to himself. One day, flying alone over the lake, he saw something amazing below him. A group of swans were gliding across the water. They were calm, graceful, beautiful. Their feathers were bright white and they moved like they belonged. The swan baby thought, "I wish I could be like them." Curious, he flew down and hid in the reeds to watch them. Suddenly, one of the swans noticed him. "Hello, beautiful swan," the swan called out. The baby swan looked around, confused and dazed. "Who are you talking to?" he asked. "I'm talking to you," said the swan. "You are the most beautiful swan I've ever seen." "Me?" the swan baby replied. "That can't be right. I'm the ugliest duckling there ever was." The swan smiled. "Oh no, you are a swan, and a very special one. Look at your reflection in the lake and see the truth." The swan baby slowly looked into the water. Looking back at him was not an ugly duckling, but a strong, graceful swan. For the first time he understood. He had never been a duck at all. Babies start out brown and awkward. They grow into their beauty over time. He had believed the lies of others instead of the truth about who he really was. The other swans gathered around him and welcomed him as a friend, and from that day on, he never forgot who he truly was, a swan, just as he always been. And I want to say, as I read there, he never forgot who he truly was. That's a war we fight daily to remember who we are. It's not something we just learn and then, like on Sundays in your young women classes, you quote the theme, I am a daughter of parents who love me. And that is a that's a personal identity statement that we state every single Sunday, stating our identity of who we are, and that you have stated every Sunday growing up as a young woman. And identities, personal identity statements help anchor us to our identity. They are there to remind us of who we are and whose we are. So sometimes when we think,
Can I just
uh-huh,
yeah, I was just thinking about how you were talking about when you put that name badge on and you say, yeah, now I'm a representative of, and then it actually at that point is when you can either go into a place of I'm in an identity crisis because I'm an imposter here, and you can spend months and months in this sensation of a imposter syndrome, or you adjust well to it and you say, yeah, this is who I am. And then when you take that badge off, then who are you now? It's a shift, both.
it is a shift, and depending on where you're called, is that there's shifts of culture, there's shifts of um, your, of having to be with somebody 24 hours a day. When they go, when they need to go and do something, you need to go and do that thing because you're like joined together to keep each other safely as missionary companions. And there can be that really fear, even though I had shared a bedroom with my sister for years before serving a mission. It was hard having a companion. And it can those the joys and the hard things of having a missionary companion and learning to get along with them. And just as you figure out how to work your companionship, you're called to have a new companion. And having to learn to navigate companions. It's like an arranged situation. You don't get to pick and choose who your companion is, and that can have its own set of challenges that to overcome. Sometimes
Identity crises.
you can be like best friends, like really good friends, and talk, find yourself, if you're not careful, talking till midnight when you should be sleeping. And other times you have frustrations and language barriers. There was a sister in my mission who was I served in Cape Town, South Africa, like I had mentioned before. But there was a sister from the Mauritius Islands who was Chinese, and she spoke Chinese. She spoke French because that's the language in the Mauritius Islands. And so when she came to Cape Town, she didn't learn English. She didn't know a common language with I don't think any of us 300 missionaries spoke French. And so that was new for her in that identity. I can imagine now, knowing what I know now about identity,
Wow.
of having to be in a foreign country away from your family with people who don't speak like you.
Talk about identity crisis. Yeah, learning a whole new language can be all its own identity crisis, right?
Right. And then the identity of here I am with my companion. And some of you have lived away from home in college or in different situations. I had not ever lived away from home, so I'm having to navigate grocery shopping for myself and menu planning and figuring out finances for the first time. There's just a lot of different things that happen on mission that can cause us to have a bit of fear and anxiety because we're doing things for the first time, the newness of this new experience that we are having. Um, and the fact that you and your companion aren't being watched every second of the day. So you're accountable to God and how you use your time and and um and being able to like report honestly how you spent your day when you go to when you because as a mission you report. I don't know, I served 30 years ago, so we had to report hours, how many hours we proselyted, how many hours we did and how many lessons we taught and how many contacts we made. So there, each mission has different things that you are that help to hold you accountable. Because when you, it's important to have accountability, and it's important to have that, and to if you can look at it like not a chore, but this is me being able to um, measure how I'm using my time.
Yeah,
Measure
and in Warrior Women and Daughters of Light, one of the things that we think is actually what the success of the program is accountability.
accountability in our programs. The Warrior Women of Light, we set 6 goals: pray, write, read, and then we those are the power goals, and then there's light. L is a learn goal, which is a meditation that we do. And as missionaries, I like to focus on the attributes of Jesus Christ here because you're something you're already doing on a mission. And that's what we're doing in Daughters of Light anyway. We're each week we meditate, we choose one attribute of God and we meditate on that and how it fills one of our core needs. So if I am having some fear of opening my mouth and looking like a blubbering idiot in front of my contacts throughout that day, I need to feel peace in my life. I need to feel comfort. I need to have courage and strength. And you can choose that attribute of God that will help strengthen that weakness and study it and ponder how that can fill that core need in your life. Because all the needs that we have, there's an attribute of God that fills that need. And it's very important to realize that and to remember that. Because I just read a bunch of attributes of God from section 4. All of those are attributes of a missionary. Those are all godly attributes. And as you study and learn and grow in them, you become a better missionary. And
We become better disciples.
Better disciples of Jesus Christ. And one thing I want to emphasize here is progress, not perfection. Sometimes we can really get into a place of, I have to know what to say perfectly. I know I did. I would sit there and tremble like a leaf and shake trying to have this discussion. Well, it was very different. I had to memorize discussions. And even now, having a lesson prepared, I have a return missionary in my home. My daughter returned just a few months ago, and one preparing to go out. And right now, my daughter preparing to go out, she went on her first appointment last Sunday with a return missionary to a ward member. And she said, "Mom, it was my turn to speak." And it was terrifying because I have never been in this situation before. Mom, I prepared with my companion, and then she's just like, "It's your turn, Sister Stuart." It's like stage fright. And but you can pray and ask God to know what to say. And it is you and that fear of the idea, you can attach that identity of Moses talks about, he was weak in words. He wasn't eloquent with his words, but his brother Aaron was more eloquent with words. We each have our strengths and our weaknesses. But as we just be ourselves, be who God created us, our own unique divine gifts and talents, and we share those, the Spirit magnifies that. You have gifts and talents that your companion does not, that will reach people your companion cannot reach. And together, it's a beautiful, like being in a duet in a musical number. You're working together, and it ebbs and it flows. And the people that you teach learn from each of you in a different way. But in knowing that you're not alone, you have a companion to stand by you. You have your
Again, going back to the, the individual that we are and what we have to bring, and also the collective that we are working with, Gathering Israel. We're not alone. And sometimes the adversarial attack on us is, you're all alone. This is not who you are. You're all alone.
Right.
You don't have support. You have to do this by yourself.
Right. And that can be a real attack. I know for me, it's like, I need to know the right things to say. I need to do that. And and we don't. We can, we're not alone. We have a comment here. We have a question, Aneladee.
Okay.
Here it says, my biggest identity crisis has been losing my confidence in the leaders of the church. Makes one wonder how deep the problems go and if God even is real. Therefore, who even am I? That is, yes, that is.
My biggest identity crisis has been losing my confidence in the leaders of the church. So that is a true satanic attack, because the truth is, the whole concept of a Gathering Israel is us as a collective putting all of our individual, collecting our individual gifts and talents and weaknesses in the same place. And now it becomes this brew of my strengths and talents and my weaknesses that I've just added to the house of Israel. And so losing your confidence in the leaders could be part of, I don't like the brew that's got all the weaknesses and all the gifts and talents in it, because that brew doesn't taste good to me. I would prefer it to be, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, but my daughter, she served a mission in Latvia. She only served for 5 months because she got very ill and came home. Part of it was because she had a mission president that was not very supportive of her. That could be her losing a lot of her confidence in the leaders. And it has not been easy for her to figure this out. Anyway, she makes borscht because she's really good at it. It's a soup with beets, and it looks blood red when you get done with it. And it's actually quite tasty. I love it, but her children hate borscht. They don't like the texture of it. They don't like the look of it. They don't like the feel of it. And so they won't eat it. And sometimes I wonder if because we are this collective of people bringing all of our stuff with us, and maybe we're making borscht over here and we're not making chicken noodle soup, or we're not making, something super simple that would maybe just feel like all sugar. all the sweet stuff. We have to join the bitter and the sweet together, and that can cause us to lose some of our confidence in what's happening around us, because we will see all the bitter, and it's hard for us to even like the sweet with the bitter.
And there's a further comment here now. It says that's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about wheat versus tares and how they taste as tests to see if they are wheat or tares. And that's a constant thing that we have to do on a daily basis. I remember being taught when I was little is that it is our responsibility to pray, to take Moroni's promise found at the end of the Book of Mormon and apply it to all truth, not to blindly follow a prophet or follow a church leader, but to pray and find out for ourselves
Yeah.
if this is true and receive confirmation through the Spirit. And that has been my guide as I have followed. But there are times where I have struggled understanding why different policies or procedures have been put into place, or I have lost faith in a young women's president or a bishop here or there because they're mortal men. They are trying, and women trying to
So
figure
she
out.
uses the word confidence and not faith, which I really actually like that word,
Okay.
and I do think it's a better word, and not necessarily losing my faith in a person, but
Right.
losing my confidence in a person. That's actually real. That's like a trust thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't trust them anymore, or I don't trust certain of them anymore. And the reason why we are always told, you pray about it and get your own confirmation of things, is because a couple of things come to my mind. One is there are certain people who are called to carry the Ark of the Covenant in the wilderness. And, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story of the person who is struck dead because he tried to steady the ark when they were carrying the ark from a battlefield to back to the tabernacle. Um, we're not that's It's not our our calling to study the ark. And so, God might tell us, look, this person who's serving in this capacity, I'm going to be using for this purpose, and you might not like him. He or she might be super bitter to you, and I will do my best to shield you from all the bitterness that comes from this person. And please stay with us. Please stay with us in as a group, because if you leave the children of Israel, if you decide to wander off, the wolves might get you, and that's going to be worse for you than if you stay in the shelter of what we have for you here to keep you safe, even though you have to put up with the bitterness of this person. And I will tell you, it would be very hard for me. I recently heard some person say, it was a man, and I have to tell you, some of the men in the church, I believe, are very old school. Some of them are amazing and so good to the women in the church, but tend to be patriarchal, if you want to call it. I don't know any other way you want to, they feel that their authority is trumps over anything that a woman might contribute. And men in general have can have a disrespect for women's voices. I'm working with a woman right now who's quite beautiful. She's just got these beautiful features, and she's so pleasant to look at. And she said that she was going before a city council, and she was with her friend who wasn't quite as beautiful as her. In fact, a little bit more opposite of her. She was chubby, quite chubby. She wasn't made up. She was a little frumpy. And she's her friend, and they were there together at this meeting. And they were presenting something to the city council, and her friend stood up to say something, and there's 9 men, 1 woman on this council. And the friend said the thing, and the council went and met. Anyway, they decided not to go with what they were, proposing. The next month they wanted to bring it back to the council again because they really wanted to be heard again, and this time they changed their tactics. My client was the one who decided to do the presentation. She presented the exact same speech, and the council went with her. I think there's stuff going on here, right? It's so weird, right? All the stuff we have to deal with as women. So losing confidence in a leader, it could be a real thing because they're not being mindful of keeping the arc steady. And the truth is that person who was struck dead because they tried to steady the ark was seeing the ark tilt. And, I have to say it's God's ark. It's not mine. If I stay within the safety of the safety net of the group so that I don't get eaten by the wolves, I might have to do that. There might be some choices I have to make. That doesn't undermine my identity as a group part of the house of Israel. I mean, I personally don't know if I would have liked Brigham Young all that much. I think I think he had some weirdness about him. I don't know if I would have had been a good friend with him. However, I can look at what he's done and how he built up the Salt Lake City, the Salt Lake Valley, and the temples, and created this amazingness. And I can say I can appreciate that. I really can appreciate that. I don't know if I would have gotten along with him. I don't really know if I liked his bitterness. And I'm willing to put up with, I'm on this earth in a crazy feeling of, all of the weakness around me, all the weaknesses and all the stupid stuff that goes on. And how do I want to manage that? And again, for me, that is, I'm going back to that individual relationship that I have with God. In our church, we're highly unique. We do not believe anything is infallible other than God's voice. And I'm infallible, so therefore I might not even be hearing God's voice correctly, right? So, I mean, there is this level of uncertainty that we have to be willing to move into. And I will tell you, part of what I deal with mental health problems is people who are just wanting certainty. They just want certainty. They're going to do this thing because it feels more certain than this thing. And it's not always the best thing for their brains. Dealing with holding that space in uncertainty can be a really good strengthening place for your brain. Would you want to read that?
Yeah, there's another question. Why do I trust my personal experience that told me the church was true as a teen, but distrust my personal experience that tells me it is not true as an adult? Now, this is something that my children face very much because of the experiences of losing confidence in leaders, especially bishops, counselors, and young women leaders because of their personal lived experience as youth within the church. Not all things were handled in the best they can. One thing I wish I could have instilled going back to identity is focusing on who you are and whose you are, and strengthening that your personal relationship with Jesus Christ and God.
And can I just also talk about the difference between a teenage brain and an adult brain?
Mm-hmm.
The teenage brain sees things very much more simply, much more black and white. As our brain gets more developed and we get more life experience, we see the nuances of life. And that does actually put us at a little bit of questioning. It gives us an opportunity to say, okay, hold on. As a teenager, this is what I received. And as an adult, this is what I'm seeing, and my eyes are more open. And that's a normal progression of the maturing and getting older and getting a brain that's more that understands more. It also can be attributed to a brain that's getting a little more rigid because we are less flexible in our thinking also at that point. And so doubt and fear is easier. It's easier to come in as an adult. And so, and it's interesting because we have these two types of brains that are my same brain, and which experience do I trust? And I'm going to say you trust both. It's not an either or, it's a both. I have an experienced brain, and I had a simple brain that had all these amazing beautifulness to it. I can learn to integrate both parts of those experiences and have a very complex, nuanced relationship with my God, my leaders, my church, my testimony, and God understands and sees me. And this is not off the point, just so you know. I hear someone saying, sorry, I shouldn't digress from the topic of the conversation with this about identity. I do believe this is about identity because this is you growing. And our identities aren't stagnant. Us learning who we are and staying in that self-leadership space is a process of us becoming stronger and stronger, learning more and more about who we are in this life. It's a very important conversation about identity. Now, do we believe that as children of Israel, a child of the covenant, a child of a disciple of Christ, that collective experience, do I believe that that's stagnant? I don't believe that's stagnant either. I believe it's new, it's growing, and it's progressive, and it's nuanced. And I do believe it's important for us to understand all of the changes that happen, to wrap our brains around change.
And sometimes it's as teens, we've been taught by our families and our family of origin, and our beliefs are connected to our families and what they believed. And when we become young adults and adults, we're having to say, what do I believe? This is what my family believes. I have my family identity, and I have my identity as an individual. So going back to that collective identity of my family and who I am. That's one thing on my mission that I had to say, who is Rhonda Stuart? Rhonda, and I wasn't Stuart then. Rhonda Jarvis, outside of Rodney and Linda, because people would go, oh, you're Rodney and Linda's daughter. But who am I? And what do I believe? This is what my family believed. This is what I was taught. And what do I believe? And I think as we grow and gain experience, like for me, I had to go through a period of time with my kids having those experiences with their leaders. What do I believe now about confidence in church leaders? Because they did do some damage to my family. Am I going to just throw away my experiences as a youth, as a teen, and my testimony from my lived experiences for what's happening now with this different set of youth leaders all these years later? And how can I best, like this, my experience as a youth and my children's experience is night and difference. There is not the same.
Yeah.
They are not. And how to navigate this when I don't know. I haven't experienced this at all.
Yeah. And can I just add, the struggle is good. It's what makes you stronger. So if you're grappling with your identity, one of the things that we do in IFS, internal family systems, is we kind of try to discover the little parts that try to take over leadership in our lives in unhealthy ways. And as we discover those parts, and we grapple with those parts and we have conversations with those parts, we can actually invite those parts of us to integrate into who we are and how we've become, and let the self lead from true strong self leadership, understanding that these parts have become part of me because of my life experience, and that's good and that's okay. And in their internal family systems, we say no bad parts. And it's not dealing with dissociative identity disorder. It's dealing with why the question of, why do I get all upset over this thing over here and get super activated and act outside of my values over here? What's causing that? What's creating that? Well, there's a part that's in pain and holding some pain, and let's nurture that part, and let's talk to that part, and let's give that part what it needs so that true self leadership can start coming out again. Yeah, so I think this is a really good conversation of integration of my identity from when I was a teenager to what I am now. And the whole losing confidence in our leaders can be a true test of us trying to grapple with who we are, with our true identity.
Yeah, and one piece I also like to see we grapple with, like I think about questions that I have sitting on that. I like to have like in my brain, I have this room full of questions sitting on a shelf, waiting for further light knowledge and revelation and understanding. 'Cause there's things I do not understand, and there's also things that look like they're opposites. And sometimes it's really hard for us to hold something that is true for me that's not true for somebody else and sit with it and go, which one's true? And it's so hard because we live in a world full of paradoxes and the opposites. And we have to do the work to see how these two ideas can mesh together. Like for me, one of them are how I have a son who is gay, and then like what does my eternal family look like now? I don't know. I'm holding on to that going, okay, I'm just going to put that on my shelf and I'm going to love this child best way I possibly can, but I don't understand how this fits into my belief.
And I'm not going to make a judgment about what I think it might be.
I'm not. I'm just going to be curious and open, have an open heart. I will one day understand this piece. But there was a time I threw a temper tantrum, like you said, about it because I was like, no, this is not the plan. This is not what we were supposed to be as a family.
And let me tell you this mental health piece of this that you just described. It is this balance. I'm holding the tension between these two things. That's where my brain is actually getting strong. When I'm able to hold the tension there, in dialectical behavioral therapy, another modality that I use, we talk about the opposites. Two things can be true at the same time, and we might not understand how. I might have my own individual experience that is different from yours, and yours is telling me one thing, and yours is telling you one thing, and mine is telling me another thing. And I can disagree with you and still hold space for your opinion. How do you do that? I hold the tension there.
And it's learning to have that personal leadership, that I can be diplomatic and be curious without judgment and listen and hear your story and hope that you will listen and hear my story. And we can sit together in this awkwardness and in this space and just love each other and love the parts just the way they are.
Yes. And let me tell you, it can feel pretty awkward a little, there are times when it feels very uncomfortable. And the truth is, in the gospel, because we teach a gospel of love, we sometimes we're afraid of that discomfort. Sometimes that discomfort, Satan can get in and tell us, well, that discomfort means this, and it may not mean that. I have a client right now who, bless her heart, she is comes from a terrible childhood trauma, and church is part of that trauma, and she goes to church, and she will go to church as long as she can before she starts feeling like she can't be there anymore, before her panic starts to set in. And she goes every week. I know this is where I want to be. I know this is where I have to test this. I know this is my exposure therapy. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay going. Some days she gets all the way through 2 hours, and some days she gets through 15 minutes.
I have that same experience. I didn't know, I thought about it as exposure therapy. There was something that happened in a relief society that triggered me, and I texted my husband, and he came rescued me, and he took me out of that relief society. Meaning, because
Wow.
I was triggered so bad, but I was stuck in the middle of these women surrounding me, and I didn't want to be embarrassed to get up. So, but there's are really real things, because we have pain points. We have things that we've been injured on. We have people who are infallible in their callings and
who are fallible,
stewardship,
not infallible, who are fallible,
who are fallible. Right, correct. Thank you. So, and that's really, and in that space of holding that, because I have seen a transformation in this young woman's president, who's now my Relief Society president. And I'm learning to love her in her growth and where she is. And I've had conversations about my children's experience with her that I couldn't have when my kids were having them, because she's grown. And she's come to me and said, I did some really hurtful things that I didn't know were hurtful.
Wow.
I held that space and that tension. Like, I didn't just and it's just that really real space.
And the world would tell us, you don't have to hold that space. Just get out of the discomfort. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. You can do that too. And your brain isn't going to grow. It is not a place of growth. You're just going to be comfortable all the time.
I got to think about that those growing pains. My children, when they have growing pains, like growth spurts, they hurt. Yeah. They have to take some little bit of Tylenol or some, herbs or something to help them through those growing pains. Growth hurts. Change is the only constant thing. Change is not the only. Change is a constant thing in our lives. Mm-hmm. And we are going to see policies and procedures within the church ebb and flow and change according to different things, different reasons. And we're going to see this. But the one thing that we can stay true to is our testimony and our belief in our Savior, in Jesus Christ, and who we are as daughters and sons of God, and how we're living our covenants. What are we doing on our part in being responsible in that space?
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much. It was beautiful. What a great discussion on identity, and thank you so much for those of you who joined us, because that makes our conversation so much better, so much richer. And and it's okay if you disagree with us, and I want to hear that, where you disagree with us, because I'm okay feeling uncomfortable. I'm learning how to do that better and better. So thank you, Anna, and we will be back here again next Friday. Okay.
Thanks.
See you later. Bye-bye.